Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today for Safe Money Radio. You might be listening online, you might be listening on the radio, but however it is that you're joining us today, we're grateful that you're here. And I will often say this when I have guests on the show. We want you to go to YouTube and watch today's show because I have a guest, and not just any guest. I have best-selling author many times over, David McKnight, joining us today. So David, thank you so much for joining us.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. And, I'll say a lot of times, I had Tom Hegna on the show just a few days ago. It actually hasn't even aired yet. It's going to air here any day. And then you'll be on here in a couple of weeks. But I know you do a lot of events with Tom, and I've done a lot of things with Tom over the years, but we walk in the same circles. We've got the same group of friends. We have the same kind of mentality regarding financial planning and safety and tax-free retirement. And so I want to start right there. Years ago, you wrote a best-selling book that's all over the place. I don't even know how many languages it's in, but The Power of Zero, which is over here behind me. And so tell me a little bit about your new book. I know that The Power of Zero is all over the place, but now you've written this new book, and I just want to put it on the screen here for those who are watching. You can go to Amazon and get this, but The Guru Gap, How America's Financial Gurus Are Leading You Astray and How to Get Back on Track. Now, that's not a really easy topic to cover, so tell us how this all came about and why you decided to write this book.
Well, I'm going to take you back in time, Brad, to 97, which is when I first started out in the financial services industry. And this is sort of, before Al Gore had really invented the internet. And, when I made a recommendation to a client or prospect, there's only so many different ways they could vet out that recommendation. So, for example, they could talk to their father-in-law, they could talk to their college roommate, they could talk to a friend, a neighbor, tax preparer, what have you. But very rarely did that sort of type of conversation derail the planning process. Well, here we are, almost 30 years later, and we live in a totally different world. And, 9 out of 10 times when I make a recommendation, someone will take to the internet and they'll vet it out. They'll see what the so-called experts have to say. And when they do that Google search, who do you suppose rises to the top of the search results? These are the people with the biggest platforms, the biggest, the biggest followings, the biggest names. These are the financial gurus, the mainstream, media personalities. Who am I talking about? Who do I address in the book? I talk about Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, Ed Fisher, particularly when it relates to annuities, a guy named Clark Howard, which, Brad, I'm sure you remember well. When I graduated from college, he was the Dave Ramsey of the world at the time, huge footprint, every radio station across the country. And then there's a Johnny come lately on the scene by the name of Ramit Sethi, who's sort of the anti-financial advisor guru. Like, he wrote the best-selling book, I Will Make You Rich. Not financial advisors will make you rich, but follow me. I will make you rich. You don't need any of that other stuff. So these are the 5 guys. And just to give you an example, Brad, when it comes to, for example, cash value life insurance, Dave Ramsey says, this is what our clients and prospects will see on the radio. Dave Ramsey says, 100% of cash value life insurance sucks 100% of the time. The only people that do it either haven't researched it enough or they're easy dupes, right? And Susie Orman says, if anybody ever tries to talk to you about cash value life insurance, you are to shut down the conversation and never work with that person again. Clark Howard says it's a steaming hot pile of garbage. The only person that would ever try to sell you is a money-grubbing, commission-hungry, life insurance agent. And then, of course, Ramit Sethi just waves it away. He says it's a scam. And so the cumulative effect of all of these indictments of these various financial products is to put people like you and I, which are really in the mainstream of financial consensus, to put you and I in league with that Nigerian prince who just inherited $1 billion and he wants to give half of it to you. He just needs you to make a $10,000 contribution to his bank account for a little seed capital. I mean, that's really the net effect of all of this advice. But the truth is, Brad, you and I both know, we've been studying this for decades, that there are reams of academic data that support mathematically, these types of financial tools that are seemingly universally demonized by these mainstream financial gurus. So really, this is my best good faith attempt to advance a dialogue around sustainable retirement planning principles. Why, for example, does Wade Pfau and and Michael Finke and all of these people that are in the mainstream of academic consensus around, for example, guaranteed lifetime income annuities and certain types of cash value life insurance, why are they all on board with it, yet it's categorically, demonized and vilified by these 5 people that I talk about in the book? And so really it's an attempt to advance a dialogue with the American public around whether we should really take seriously the type of advice that we're getting from these mainstream financial gurus.
Boy, that's so good. And if you're listening right now and you haven't heard anything about this book, I will tell you, it's just come out. And I ordered it 2 ways. Of course, I wanted a hard copy because I love books. I'm sitting in my library right now. But I also ordered the audiobook, and I listened to it 3 times already. And so if you're listening right now and you want to know more about what David's talking about, you need to just go to Amazon and order a copy of The Guru Gap. And how America's financial gurus are leading you astray and how to get back on track. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. David and I both are very passionate about this. We've certainly seen our fair share of the junk and the garbage of the misinformation in mainstream media by people who are making millions and millions of dollars lining their own pockets with sharing the information about how bad these things are and how bad we are for ever talking to you about them. So I know it's controversial, but hey, we're here to handle the difficult topics in life. We want you to get to where you need to go in retirement planning. And we can tell you this because I know David shares this philosophy with me. We're both good friends with Ed Slott. Ed's written forwards for our books. We've been in the Ed Slott Master Lead IRA Advisor Group. I know that Ed was in the Power of Zero movie documentary that actually the DVD sitting here behind me years ago. And we all agree on this. There is one thing that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams, and it's taxes. So we're going to talk a lot about all these things today. You can call us anytime for more information. Our number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And there's always someone standing by to take your call. Well, friends, if you're just joining us, we've got good friend David McKnight on the show today, the author of The Power of Zero, author of Tax-Free Income for Life. The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming was just an eye-opener for me. It changed my life and the way that I worked with my clients and customers. And so now he's written the book, The Guru Gap, how America's financial gurus are leading you astray and how to get back on track. And so, David, with what you said in that first segment, I want to start with this. Cheryl Moore, we both know Cheryl. She's been in the industry for forever. And she wrote a new book this last year, Why I Bought Fixed Indexed Annuities, which is a great book. And there's a chapter in that book that the title is this: She or He Who Controls the Media Controls the Financial Services World. And it's a fascinating chapter. She talks about this: insiders, journalists, and reporters, and why they are often dead wrong when it comes to the information that they're sharing regarding retirement products. And she says this: follow the money to find out why they say what they say to consumers. So talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about these gurus and why Cheryl Moore would be saying he or she who controls the media controls the financial services world. What does she mean by that?
Well, take a perfectly practical example. Ken Fisher. We all know Ken Fisher's stance on annuities. In fact, when you Google, is an annuity a scam or should I do an annuity, what do you think comes right to the top of the search results? It's Ken Fisher's paid advertisement, which is, I hate annuities and so should you. Like, he's literally trademarked the phrase, I hate annuities, so should you. Clearly, Ken Fisher has a vested financial interest in you investing with his company. And guess what? When you invest in annuities, it gets wrapped up in surrender charges, so it becomes very difficult for you to move your money to Ken Fisher. And so I think he sees people with annuities as sort of like fish in a barrel. It's just easy picking, it's low-hanging fruit. If he can demonize annuities and what annuities are able to accomplish for you that no other financial tool can accomplish, I think it makes it easier for him to do his job, which is to gather as many assets as he possibly can. I think he currently has $270 billion of assets under management. He's worth $7 billion. So he's been pretty good at making that case to the American public. You take, for example, Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey will put out a video on YouTube in which he demonizes cash value life insurance. At the very end of that video, he will invite you to surrender that policy, no matter what the surrender charge, take the proceeds, and, dedicate it towards a term life insurance policy from Zander Insurance, with whom he has a very tight financial relationship. And so really, I think that's true. At the end of the day, all of these gurus have some sort of financial motivation. And the scary part of it is it's not a mathematical motivation. I have always said, how can you tell if a guru is telling you the truth or not? You hold their recommendation up to the light of math. You examine their recommendations through the prism of math and actuarial science, and that will tell you if what they're telling you is true or not. I don't care at the end of the day which product you use or which product you embrace, as long as it gives you the highest likelihood that your money lasts through life expectancy, it gives you highest level of income, and allows you to pass the most money on to the next generation. Those are the three main considerations. And if mathematically what you're doing allows you to accomplish those three things, and that should be the most important thing at the end of the day.
Boy, I agree. Couldn't agree more. And that's why I'll say on the show, I say it all the time. I personally own eight fixed index annuities. I own 3 cash value life insurance policies, IULs, Index Universal Life. I also own life insurance. I did own life insurance on my father, who's already passed, and that's already blessed our family. I owned a second to die on my mother and father. I own a life insurance policy on my mother. I own a life insurance policy on my son. I own a life insurance policy on my daughter. And so when people say, oh, they're just in this for the money it's going to put in their own pocket, I put more than 6 figures into life insurance every single year. My money's where my mouth is. I own the annuities. I have over $1 million in annuities held through my own investments. So you have the annuities on one side, the insurance on the other. Why in the world would I do this stuff if it's so terrible for a person financially? You think that if I was some scam artist, that I would be putting my own money into all these products? I'm doing it because the math and the science doesn't lie. I've listened to Dr. Wade Fowle, Dr. Michael Finke, Dr. David Blanchett, and on and on and on. The Ed Slots, the Tom Hegnas, all the other gurus that have done the research, the math and the science. And so we're so grateful for the information that you're sharing. And let me ask this. I know it's a long answer, and we've only got a little bit of time in this segment, but I'll say this. Obviously, a lot of these gurus are giving their opinions that they're quoting as book, chapter, and verse, like it's biblical truth, and it's not. Why do you think they got off track with their advice? What is the bottom line for why they're doing what they're doing?
There's a different answer for each financial guru, okay? And I address this in the first chapter of my book, specifically as it relates to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey did not grow up as a financial advisor. He grew up as a debt counselor. So he did not marinate in the mainstream financial consensus. He sort of took his cues outside of that, that accepted, medium of truth. And so at the end of the day, Dave Ramsey is trying to cultivate an adversarial relationship. His goal, Brad, is to peel your clients and my clients away from us and to absorb them into his tribe. And so I think at the end of the day, he's trying to cultivate that quote unquote outside the box way of viewing the financial world that's very much at odds with the stodgy, mainstream financial consensus. And he thinks that by doing so, he's giving his listeners cutting edge financial advice. But at the end of the day, the math doesn't add up, as we've already discussed. And I think ultimately people are going to run out of money far in advance of when they run out of life, which is really the biggest problem with his advice at the end of the day.
And it's the number one concern of all retirees. I recorded a show late last night on a brand new January 2025 Wall Street Journal article that's talking about how even wealthy people are afraid that they're going to run out of money before they run out of life, and why. So friends, if you're listening right now, you want to stay with us. Best-selling author David McKnight is with us. You can call us anytime for more information, 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And go to Amazon and order his new book, The Guru Gap. You're going to want to read it and listen to it. Like I said, I bought the book, the hard copy, and also got it where I could listen to it on Audible, and I've already listened to it 3 times. So 866-780-7233. There's always someone standing by to take your call. Friends, if you're just joining us, best-selling author of The Power of Zero and The Guru Gap, David McKnight is with us today. And we've been talking about what he's talking about in his new book, all these financial gurus that you'll hear on the radio and you'll see on the TV, and they're giving all kinds of advice to those of you who are following them. And I know that you said something, David, in your book. I want to share this and have you talk about it. You said, when it comes to the gurus and the advice they're giving, There's no hiding the fact that the retirement advice they dispense tends to be good for bad investors and bad for good investors. Tell us about this.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the thesis of the book. And I hate to pick on Dave Ramsey, but he really is the star of the show. I mean, I do talk about all of the other gurus, but his advice is so uniformly bad that there's rarely a page goes by where I'm not talking about him in some form. But just to give you an example, I think that if you're making $50,000 and spending 60, Dave Ramsey is precisely the guy you should be talking about right now. I mean, I think that he has exerted a net positive benefit on America because he gets a lot of people out of debt and on the road to financial independence. So he's very, very good at getting you off of square one and on the road to saving and paying down your credit cards, things like that. He may even get you to the point where you have $1 million. So that's the good part. That's good, Dave, right? And then, well, once you get to the point where you got $1 million, then bad Dave comes out, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, Dave Ramsey, once again, when it comes to retirement distributions, his recommendations are not rooted in math or actuarial science. So, for example, he will recommend that you take between 8 and 10% withdrawal rates on your retirement. Why? Because he thinks that you can get 12% year over year linear rates of return in retirement. He doesn't seem to understand something called sequence of returns risk. He thinks that corpus of money is just going to keep laying golden eggs every year in perpetuity, right? And he says this over and over and over again. I'm not making this stuff up. And the problem with all of this is if you take out, let's just say 8%, you take 8% withdrawal rates on your portfolio, on that $1 million, according to Wade Pfau, according to the numbers that he's crunched in the Monte Carlo scenarios, you will run out of money in advance of actuarial life expectancy 63% of the time, not even a coin flip. 2 out of 3 times you will run out of money before you run out of life. And so it's what I call the Dave Ramsey circle of poverty. He's very good at getting you off of square one on the road to financial dependence, even to the point where you might have $1 million, but then he promptly bankrupts you by telling you to take 8 to 10% withdrawal rates, in which case you're right back down to zero again. So it's problematic. And I've had people write to me through my YouTube channel when they see my videos about it. They'll say, hey, I had an aunt who did what Dave Ramsey said. She ran out of money. And so this is something that we're going to start seeing more and more and more because Dave Ramsey is not taking a responsible fiduciary-based approach to giving financial advice.
Boy, I agree. And we're going to talk more about that in the next segment, this 12% gain and this 8% withdrawal rule. But for those of you that are listening, and certainly you've been listening to me in the Ozarks, in the Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, center earth where Dave Ramsey is worshiped and everyone loves him. And I learned many years ago, be very, very careful about ever mentioning Dave Ramsey's name on the radio or in a meeting because people, they love him. He's got their Bible, they're in their Bible class at their church, they're following his material and and that that's great. I always want to say this, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. When it comes to Dave getting you out of debt and having you follow, like David was saying, follow certain guidelines to not overspend, to not buy super expensive homes and brand new cars when your budget doesn't allow. He's great for that. When it comes to other things, last I checked, there aren't any financial designations behind Dave's name. Last I checked, he's not representing any of these products that we have sold thousands of copies of, and he hasn't put any financial plans in place for people like we have and stand on that backing every single day. It's a whole different ball game. And so you have to be real careful with what part of the advice you pay attention to and you take to heart. Use what you can use to help get you out of debt, get you on the right track, develop a budget. But outside of that, beyond that, you better be looking toward the motivation for why he wants you to do what he wants you to do. So, friends, stay with us. We're going to be talking about some really powerful stuff after this break. As always, our number is 866-780-7233. Maybe you're hearing this and you think, whoa, this is making my head spin. I've actually been doing all that. I listen to every single thing Dave Ramsey says. I watch Susie Orman on PBS. I've done everything she said. I've heard them say, never buy an annuity. Cash value life insurance sucks. Now what do I do? Because I've had all this in my head. Well, you need to call us. You need to listen to a different type of expert. So our number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. We'll give you a free financial consultation and sit down with you. We will give you access to information like this, David McKnight's The Guru Gap, which you can get by just going to Amazon and ordering it. Get the book, get Audiobook, if you're a listener, it's great information. 866-780-7233. There's always someone standing by to take your call. Now, friends, if you're just joining us, we're going to be talking more about David McKnight's new book, The Guru Gap. And we've been talking about how America's financial gurus are leading you astray and how to get you back on track. And so I want to start with this. There's this famous 4% withdrawal rule that's been talked about for, I don't know, David, 30 years now, maybe more, maybe 40. Let's talk a little bit about the 4% rule and then talk about what some of these gurus are saying that, no, that 4% rule, that doesn't hold any merit. So tell us a little bit about the 4% rule for withdrawing when it comes to retirement.
Yeah, so we go back to this idea that every pre-retiree or retiree's goal is simply to make sure their money lasts as long as they do. That's their number one goal. Second place isn't even all that close. So the question is, what strategy or combinations of strategies will increase the likelihood that your money does last through your actuarial life expectancy? And pre-1992, people were taking willy-nilly distribution rates on their retirement portfolios. Like you could have $1 million and people would say, okay, what has the market been performing lately? If they think 7%, then 7% was a reasonable rate of withdrawal you could take in perpetuity, on your portfolio and have a reasonably high likelihood of never running out of money. Well, 1992, advisor, I believe he was MIT trained, by the name of Bill Bengen, said, this seems really willy-nilly and random, and it really makes me uncomfortable. So he did a series of, Monte Carlo scenarios in which he basically said, okay, if you were to take it, and he did rolling periods of, going backwards in time of the S&P 500 and said, okay, if you took 7% withdrawal rates, what's the likelihood that your money would last through life expectancy? And the results sort of curled his hair. I mean, he was shocked to his core. I mean, you're running out of money over half the time. Even 5% withdrawal rates had unusually high failure rates. And he finally settled on this number, 4%. You had about an 85% likelihood that your money would last through life expectancy. And so 4% became sort of the gold standard. And what that means is that you take whatever your day one retirement balance is, let's say it's $1 million. You take $40,000 that first year, and you can adjust that number every year for inflation thereafter. So the second year, it's $40,000 plus 3%, which gets you to $41,200, so on and so forth. It's all keyed off of your day one retirement balance. So even if your money goes down, even if it goes up, you're constrained to that little tiny distribution. And that really, Ken Fisher believes in that. Ramit Sethi believes in that. Clark Howard believes in that. The only person who is starting to not believe in that is Susie Orman. She is even more conservative. She believes that it's 3%, which means, if you want $40,000 per year, you no longer need to accumulate $1 million by day one of retirement. You need to accumulate $1.33 million by day one of retirement to be able to have that $40,000 income adjusted for inflation. So that's really the genesis of the 4% rule. Experts are starting to, Tom Hegna really calls that into question. He thinks it's most closer to 3%. So does the Wall Street Journal. And so it's really a very, very expensive way to purge longevity risk from your financial picture.
And, I could talk about this for the next hour. So this segment may be longer than the others, but I will say, I want to bring in two other things, kind of put you on the spot, but it's stuff that you know by heart, and you've already mentioned it on this show. So you mentioned sequence of returns risk. I talk about it all the time. I've written all kinds of articles about it. It's in both my books. Wade Fowle, Michael Finke, David Blanchett, everybody talks about sequence of returns risk all the time, which is something that Dave Ramsey completely ignores, doesn't give any merit to whatsoever, when he's just saying, oh, you can take 8% out. The market, a good mutual fund will make 12% per year, and you can take out 8% with no problem. Let's talk about the sequence of returns risk and what that is for our listeners and why what he is saying is completely untrue.
Yeah, so the problem is, 8%, if you could have a guarantee that your money grew at 12%, 8% obviously is not a problem because you're never, ever going to dig into your principal. You build in a little inflation buffer, as Dave Ramsey says, and it will keep laying those golden eggs year over year over year. The problem is we know that that's not how the stock market works in the real world. There is a cost of admission to be in the stock market game, and that's you got to be willing to endure some volatility along the way. And so The problem is if you experience a series of down years in the first 10 years of retirement, while you're taking those 8% distribution rates, what happens is it can send your portfolio into a death spiral from which it never recovers. And in my book, Tax-Free Income for Life, I actually have a chart that shows that if you had retired in the year 2000, and we know that there was three straight down years, 2000, 2001, 2002, and you were taking that 10% withdrawal rate, you would actually, it's page 27, you'd actually run out of money in 8 years, okay? So this is not laying golden eggs in perpetuity like Dave Ramsey says. You actually run out of money in 8 years. If you take an 8% withdrawal rate, you would have run out of money in 11 years. So the real world experience does not jive with what Dave Ramsey says, from the comfort of his, of YouTube studio. It's just the real world experience is completely different than what Dave Ramsey is predicting you are likely to encounter in retirement.
Friends, in my best-selling book, Bulletproof, The Safe and Secure Retirement Income Plan, I talk about the triple whammy. But since then, I've realized, how did I not include the fourth thing, the quadruple whammy? And it's exactly what David's been talking to you about. If you take distributions while experiencing losses, while paying a fee on your accounts, while paying taxes on the distributions, those four things will wipe you out in retirement, especially if you start off your retirement at the beginning of the bear market. So, and I always say, what if you retired on December the 31st of 2021, and your very first year in retirement, everything was left in a brokerage account, and the market goes down 20% in year one, and you took distributions and experienced 20% plus in losses? If you had bonds in there, you might have had up to 30% losses in that year, and paid fees and paid taxes because that all came out of a 401k or an IRA. Well, you're in trouble. Even though the market rebounded back and came back beautifully in 23 and 24, the science says you're going to struggle when it starts off that way. And what happens if that lasts for 18 months or 2 years like it often does? So I want to say this, David, in your book, The Guru Gap, you say this: if you aren't on track to accumulate the required amount by retirement, you'll need to resort to 5 unsavory alternatives. And these things include saving more, spending less, working longer, dying sooner, or taking more risks in the stock market. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so the 4% rule says, or the 3% rule, which is even more, cataclysmic. The 4% rule says, if you need $40,000 per year, for example, adjusted every year for inflation in retirement, you have to accumulate $1 million in your retirement portfolio by day one of retirement. Most Americans are not on pace to accumulate that amount of money. And it might be 80,000. If it's 80,000, it's 2 million. If you're playing by the 3% rule, then it's going to be even more. So the question is, if you are not on track to accumulate that amount of money, and you are adopting the 4% rule like Ken Fisher and others tell you to do, how do you bridge that retirement shortfall? How do you start to make up the lost ground? How do you bridge that retirement shortfall? Well, there's 5 pretty unsavory ways of going about doing that. Like you said, saving more, spending less, working longer, dying sooner, taking more risk on the stock market. None of these are the types of conversations that my clients want to start having. And so the question is, are there mathematically more efficient, more economical ways of being able to produce a given amount of income for retirement? And the answer is absolutely yes. And that's really one of the theses of the book, that there are less expensive ways of going out purging longevity risks from your retirement and making sure you have enough money to pay for your living expenses in retirement.
Well, that's so good. Friends, if you're listening right now and you went in and sat down with a financial professional and said, well, hey, you're like a doctor of all things financial. Doc, how am I doing? What if they looked over at you and said, well, I tell you what, here's the answer. You're going to need to save more, spend less, work longer, die sooner, and take more risk in the stock market. How many of you would be happy about that answer? We know the answer. That's not what you want to hear. And we're trying to protect you from things like this. That's why David's written so many great best-selling books: The Power of Zero, Tax-Free Income for Life, The Guru Gap. If you want more information, give us a call. If you want a free financial consultation, just give us a call. Go to Amazon, order David's new book, The Guru Gap. You're going to be so glad that you did. Our number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. And there's always someone standing by to take your call. Well, friends, I know that if you're listening to this, David's on the show for the first time. We'll have him back on again. We've had so many wonderful guests on the show over all the years, and we've only got time for a couple more segments. So, David, I really want to jump into something deep here. In your new book, In the Guru Gap, in Chapter 5, you talk a lot about the power of fixed indexed annuities and cash value life insurance, which I've already said on the show. I own 8 different annuities. I own 3 different IULs. I own 10 different life insurance policies total. And so perhaps my favorite quote in this book is when you talk about this in a section that's called Solving Longevity Risk Through Annuities. And you say this: "Now, before you tune me out and cast this book aside, know that if you reject the underlying premise of annuities, you are simultaneously rejecting the mathematical principles that undergird Social Security and the company pension you may be planning on receiving. In their most basic form, annuities are the only financial tool that allows you to completely purge longevity risk from your retirement plan. I'm not talking about 75% or an even 85% success rate. I'm talking about 100%. I love this. I've been pounding this drum for years and years. I've owned annuities and cash value life insurance since 2008. So, David, talk to us about why the gurus say so many bad things about cash value life insurance and annuities.
Well, I think that it really comes down to this, Brad. I think that the job of the guru is to take important yet at times complicated financial principles and to distill them down into 10-second sound bites. And the reality is the 4% rule is just much easier to explain to people than all of the different permutations of life insurance or cash value annuities or cash value life insurance. If, for example, Dave Ramsey were to say, look, annuities are good in situation A, B, and C, but not situation D, E, and F, that runs counter to his entire marketing model. His entire marketing model is to be able to spoon feed a one-size-fits-all, 8 by the number, black and white financial worldview to every possible demographic. Every possible demographics, but got to be able to listen to Dave Ramsey and say, Dave Ramsey is speaking to me. His advice applies to me. And if you start talking about, important but sometimes complicated financial tools that have lots of different applications that may or may not apply to your specific situation, then he's got to get into nuance. He's got to get into specific recommendations, and that's just not his sweet spot. The sweet spot of the financial advisor like you and me is the ability to make a customized, tailored financial recommendation that may incorporate some or all of the tools that we're talking about on the show. And so I think at the end of the day, they just don't have the luxury of nuance, and they have to dispense that one-size-fits-all advice. And unfortunately, some very important financial tools sort of fall by the wayside along the way.
From time to time, I'll meet with someone and there's a situation. It's rare, but from time to time, I'll find someone and go, you know what? You may not need an annuity in your portfolio. You may not need any life insurance. It's almost impossible on the life insurance side because I can find a reason every single time why they do. Someone may say, oh, well, Brad, I'm worth $10 million. I'm worth $20 million. Hey, I met with someone last week worth $45 million. Why would I need an annuity or life insurance? Well, you probably don't need an annuity. You've got pension, Social Security, income coming from every direction. But do you have a long-term care policy in place? No, a lot of them don't. They don't think they need to because they have all this money. Well, there's a potential gap and hazard there. Are you going to have an estate planning problem? I assure you are. So why would you want to leave tax-deferred assets to your heirs when you could leave the power of something completely and totally tax-free that would pay all the taxes on all the tax-deferred assets? You meet someone with $40 or $50 million in today's world, almost always they're going to have millions and millions of dollars in tax-deferred assets that maybe was saved in a 401k or in a cash balance plan or some type of tax-deferred asset. And guess what? They're going to owe taxes on that distribution, either them, their spouse, or their heirs. And so they have problems that they don't realize they have. And a lot of these products can solve solutions for so many things. I'm grateful for your information and you sharing the importance of how an annuity and combined with other products like cash value life insurance can really put together a complete estate plan. And we're not saying that's the only thing you need to own. Man, and I know this is the same for you, Dave, but I have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate. I've owned as many as 4 farms at one time. And so multiple homes, different properties. I've spread into lots of different buckets, if you will. I believe in the bucket mentality. And that comes from Wade Pfau and Michael Finca going through the American College through the Retirement Income Certified Professional Program. You've got to spread things into lots of different buckets, and you got to be kind of agnostic regarding the one thing that everyone needs. There's no one magic bullet. They need a lot of everything in their portfolio. But when any guru or anyone tells you, oh, you should never buy that, that's crap, you don't need it, that anyone that tells you that, they're a fraud. You need to be really careful of someone that's saying that to you. And that is absolutely what David's going to talk a lot about in his new book, The Guru Gap, how America's financial gurus are leading you astray and how to get you back on track. So if maybe you've wandered down that path, you drank the Kool-Aid and you realize you're hearing this and you're like, oh, maybe I need a second opinion, we'll give it to you. Call us anytime, 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. We'll be back right after this break with one more segment with David McKnight. Friends, if you're joining us today, I know you've probably enjoyed this. The beauty to YouTube is being able to go back and pause and rewind and watch. I had a video this last week, David, that I think today will hit 400,000 views. And we were talking about IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts, the surcharge on Medicare. And, it's only been online for like 8 days, but pow, just overnight, something was such a hot button topic. And why? We know over 1,000 comments on there. That's because so many people are getting these Medicare letters, and the government is letting them know, CMS is letting you know, hey, we're about to start taking deductions from your Social Security paycheck. And if you don't have a Social Security paycheck, you're going to write us a check for the premiums that are due on your Medicare. And something like that is just one topic of many, many topics of why we add so much value to our clients, is being able to say, yeah, I know about IRMA. I've been talking about IRMA for years with all of our guests on the show and things that we write about. So let's talk more about that. I know that when it comes to you, you've got followings all over YouTube. And at the end here, I want you to tell all of our listeners how they can find more of your information, how to get all of your books. But you are one of the nation's leading experts in the field of tax planning and guaranteed tax-free retirement income for life. So as we come to a close today, I want to ask you personally, what advice do you have to our listeners right now, especially, if they're about to retire, if they're getting near retirement? What would you have to say to those that are listening right now?
Well, the one thing that we haven't talked too much on here yet about is the fiscal trajectory of the nation. And I think it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. Elon Musk has been really sounding the warning cry lately. And that's that our fiscal trajectory is unsustainable. We have over $239 trillion of unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We've got $36 trillion of debt. It's going to grow by $2 trillion per year over the next 10 years, and then $3 trillion per year after that, unless we sort of get ahead of all this. But likely, more and more experts are starting to agree that tax rates, even 10 years from now, are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today. And so that should serve as a warning cry to people who have accumulated the lion's share of their retirement savings in tax-deferred vehicles like 401ks and IRAs. After all, what did you do? You took a deduction at historically low tax rates only to postpone the payment of those taxes to a point in the future when tax rates are likely to be much higher than they are today. So really, and Brad, you understand this, and all of your guests understand this, but yeah, we've got this window of opportunity within which to take advantage of historically low tax rates. Trump is going to extend the Trump tax cuts for another 8 years. That means we have 2025 and then another 8 years after that. So we have 9 years to take advantage of historically low tax rates. That means if you've got a lot of money in your tax deferred account, start to convert that to Roth IRAs. Stretch that tax obligation out over the next 8 or 9 years. I always tell people, shift the money slowly enough that you don't rise into a tax bracket that gives you heartburn, but shift it quickly enough that you get all the heavy lifting before tax rates go up for good. And you can utilize cash value life insurance and annuities as part of that strategy. You can have all your income coming to you tax-free at the end of the day so that you're completely shielded from the impact of those higher taxes. So I just say be cognizant of the fiscal trajectory of our country. Tax rates aren't going to stay low forever. Come 2035, you'll look back on the year 2025 and say, man, tax rates were a good deal of historic proportions. Why did I not take advantage of tax rates while they were historically low? So that's really, I think, my big message is that tax rates are not going to stay low forever. So strike while the iron's hot.
And if those of you who are listening right now, we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about required minimum distributions and funds that have to come out of your account at some point. And the world got really confusing over the last couple of years because forever it was age 70 and a half when required minimum distribution started. And then it moved to 72 for 1 year. And then it moved to 73, which is where we are now. And then in the future, about 2035, I believe it is, anyone born after January the 1st, 1960 or later, it's going to be age 75. You can defer those tax deferred accounts all the way out to age 75. But just like David is very beautifully saying, you have this window, whether your RMD is going to start at 73 or at age 75, that between now and then, you can start going in and doing what we call mini Roth conversions, MINI-MANY. Those mini smaller Roth conversions to keep you in the same tax bracket and get rid of this tax now while taxes are on sale. And so such great advice. And we've got time for just about 1 minute. So I want to say this to the person who says, oh man, I've got everything I need. Why would I need life insurance? What's your 30-second spill on that, Dave?
Well, two things. First, if you're younger, there's something called the volatility buffer. Build 3 to 5 years worth of living expenses in your cash value life insurance. By the time you reach retirement, in the year following a down year in the market, pay for your living expenses out of your cash value life insurance. Gives your stock portfolio a chance to recover before you take further distributions. That act alone will double your sustainable withdrawal rate on your stock portfolio from 4 to 8%, with a 95% likelihood that you will have your money last through life expectancy. And if you're already retired, use your cash value life insurance as a way to pay for long-term care. Get your death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. And if you die peacefully in your sleep 30 years from now, never having to need long-term care, someone's still getting a death benefit. Probably your kids, your grandkids. So there's that sensation of having paid for something you hope you never have to use.
Friends, that's why he is one of the nation's leading experts. You just heard it. He doesn't have to think through it. This is what he does every day. It's in his heart and it's in his soul. And then he educates advisors and clients all over the country. So David McKnight, we're so grateful to have you on the show today. If you would, real quick, tell everyone how they can find more information about you, how they can get your books.
Sure, you can get any of my books on Amazon. It's probably the best place to do it. If you want to buy them in bulk, davidmcknightbooks.com. And take a look at my YouTube channel. It's The Power Is Here.
Wonderful. Friends, we'll have David back on again. I know this has blessed you today. We're so grateful that you've joined us. If we can help in any way, just call us at 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. Have a great week and God bless.